is the race committee, and this race is live.
How's the pressure look on this right side, Upwind?
Okay, he's tacked back. Left side looks pretty good still.
What do you think if we do 2 tacks?
I think so.
So in that case, we need to keep it fast.
It's a bit more stressful than it needed to be, eh?
Welcome back to our special series of North Sails podcasts focused on the America's Cup. I'm Ken Reed, president of North Sails and North Technology Group, and I'm here in Barcelona in the heart of the action that is the oldest trophy in international sport. This episode, I was delighted to speak with some of the biggest names in the Cup world, both past and present. First up, Nathan Outteridge, one of the helmsmen aboard Emirates Team New Zealand and simply one of the stars of our sport. Nathan started his Cup experience in 2013 and then again in 2017 with Artemis Racing. I got to know Nathan quite well during the 2020 Cup in New Zealand, but at that stage he was taking the Cup off from sailing and comfortably jumped into the commentary booth with Shirley Robertson, Stephen McIver, and myself. But he was always itching to get back on the water and jumped at the chance to be the left side driver on Emirates Team New Zealand for this time around. Nathan gave us insight into his blossoming Cup career and had some fascinating things to say as a preview to their contest with either Ineos Britannia or Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli. I also sat down with Bruno Dubois, the CEO of Orient Express Racing Team and a longtime friend and member of the North Sails family whose ambitious Cup campaign was thwarted early in the round-robin stages. And finally, we've included our super engaging chat with friend and Cup legend Tom Whidden, where we cover a lot of different topics. It's hard to talk to Tom without covering a lot of different topics, and I even heard a few stories that I've never heard before. So buckle up, and let's get right into it. Most important question, do you miss Shirley and MacGyver and me and the TV booth?
Absolutely. That was some of the best days. To be honest, I do prefer sailing. I think we all prefer sailing. But I really enjoyed our time in Auckland and watching the racing. And it's been so interesting to now actually go on the boats, sail with the people we were talking about. And some of our theories were right and some of them far off. So
Sounds like the press.
Yeah.
Just when in doubt, take a guess.
yeah, exactly. And if you don't know, you just make it up.
Don't give away all the secrets.
That's how we sail as well. If you don't know, just sound confident.
Artemis Racing 2017, a little blast from the past, right? And then you got Emirates Team New Zealand here in Barcelona 2024. First of all, can you kind of define some major differences between the programs and what it was like back then in Bermuda and what it's like today?
Yeah, I guess the big difference is one was a new team trying to create its structure. Ian Percy was running the team in Bermuda. I was the skipper of the program, and I was very young for an America's Cup, and Ian was also probably quite young to be running the whole program. And so after the 2013 Cup, there was a lot of restructuring within the organisation on how the operations were going to work, how we were going to do the design of the boat, the construction, and then obviously the on-water sailing. You compare that to Team New Zealand, this team's been going for decades. And so I've kind of slotted into a oiled machine. And, you look around the building here and what we were doing in Auckland, and everything, has the process already working just fine. Whereas at Artemis, we were constantly trying to adjust the program. You'd look for a design development path and things would show up a little bit later than you expect, which had knock-on effects, whereas nothing shows up late here ever. Yeah. It's always on time. So just the maturity of the team, I think, is quite different. And the other thing I think that has probably changed a lot since Bermuda days to now, which, we're not even talking 10 years, is just the amount of technology and how it gets used. Like in Bermuda, we had no simulator. Everything we did was on-water testing.
Did anybody have a simulator back then?
New Zealand had a simulator back then, and they were doing lots of testing of foils, testing of systems on a simulator. And I think some other teams had small simulators, but the first thing that person I talked about was getting a simulator up and running as soon as that Cup ended, which Artemis Technologies ended up doing. Yeah. They built a really good simulator, because we realized that we just spent so much time doing on-water testing, and there's only so many iterations of foils and things like that you can build and test and make a next step on. Whereas Here, we do all the testing on a computer, and then you get so much confidence that, what you actually produce and build and put on the water is going to be good, and then you do fine tuning from there. So I think a little bit was New Zealand was ahead of the times, and now I'm sure every team here in Barcelona has very good simulator tools, but the amount of sailing I've done in a simulator here is probably equal to what I've done on the water, which is massively different.
That's unbelievable. So is it weird in the job interview to take the job process to know that you're going to fit into a slot rather than I get to kind of be myself, kind of get to be, does your individuality kind of get knocked down in order to fit into the slot in a group like this?
I guess yes and no. Like, I was very happy to slot into the role. I think after the, Jimmy and Keko showed with Luna Rossi, you could sail these boats with two helmsmen. I think the team realised that we need to, gear up for that. And so to be in the supporting role alongside Pete has been really enjoyable for me. He has all the knowledge on how the boats work from the last campaign, so I didn't have to do trial by error. I got to talk to him and learn about how the boats work, and then together we've collectively developed a sailing style on how we drive the boats, how we trim the sails, and to try and take on the head roll is always fun. To try and be creating your own structure is great, but it's also cool to just step in and go, this is my area of the campaion that I'm going to own, and know that the rest of it's taken care of for you.
What are they like to say? What do they like to drive these things? Give us a quick rundown. What's it like to hop in the cockpit of these things?
Well, firstly, it's very stationary. Most boats you sail, you get to move around and look at the boat from different angles, change sides. So, this is your cockpit, this is your wheel, these are your displays, so you can customize everything you want. And
you personalize things?
Well, I was joking with my wife, Em, I put a photo of the kids and all that, because you're literally just there for the day, and you get out when you change jibs. But
it's like a prison cell, I think. They do the same thing.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not that bad. But the boat itself, it's like a beast, like when we sailed it's kind of more like, I guess, the 72s than the 50s. The AC40 is like the 50. It's really light, nimble, very responsive. You get a lot of feedback, you get a lot of feel, whereas the big boats, we don't get much feel. They're over 6 ton. They've got lots of load in the sails, and they just absolutely rip. So a lot of what you're doing when you're sailing is just following all the performance numbers, following all the loads, all the sail shapes. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on when you're sitting there just reading the screen. And you spend a lot of time on the leeward side, or half the day, just looking at the performance of the boat and just making suggestions on how you might set things up a little bit differently. And then when you're driving, you're focused on fewer numbers just to try and make sure the boat's going quite fast. And you look at a steering wheel today compared to a steering wheel of the past, and it's like a Formula One steering wheel. I've lost count. There's well over 20 buttons on the wheel, and you don't label them. You just know exactly what they do, and you're so involved in the development process that, there's only about 4 people in the building who know how these steering wheels work. But the boat itself it's an absolute weapon, and the most impressive thing is just how fast they go in the little wind we sail in.
Do you think the performance is what it is without the two mainsails, without the twin skin mainsails?
No way. The unbelievable thing is just how little drag and how much thrust you can get off a twin skin main versus a single skin. The classic example of how low drag it is you're sitting there hoisting the main, drifting backwards, right? And the mast is blowing you back at about 3 knots, and you pull the main up and you're half the speed, just because it fares the mast in so nicely, which means it's when you go for your tap, there is so little drag. And previously a main would flap as attack. This thing just goes from up, camber, dead flat, to a bit of camber on the other side. And the other beauty is what you can do with the actual depth. Like, we can go through huge camber ranges because you're adjusting windward skin versus leeward skin, and you can make the main be 10% deep, and then you could get it down to 2% if you wanted to. Like, just the range is just incredible. And the fabric that gets used in sails these days, you can do similar things on the jibs. It's amazing how you can make a sail, apparent wind angle of 8 upwind, and then boom, down when you just like change the shapes and adjust it.
Very fun to watch for all of us laymen.
Yeah.
So last commentator question. It feels like, and Shirley keeps saying this in the booth, I've been listening to some of the broadcasts, that you guys are really have gotten really good at describing the situation, because essentially 3/4 of the boat is blind, right? They can't see anything. Do you think, has that come into play? Is it easier just to kind of paint the picture right now, or is that something that's always come natural?
It's something that I've always sort of enjoyed doing, and something that I trained a lot for when I sailed the 49er. So like Gerbs and I would sail together, and he would be about making the boat go as fast as possible. And I would have to paint the picture to him on strategically and tactically what, we plan on doing. Because if he ever lifted his shoulders up to look over his shoulder, the boat would slow down. So that is now on speed, because, he could turn his head and see a bit, but when we're going upwind on port and Pete wants to know what's over my shoulder, unless Blair or I can explain to him what we see, or on starboard tack and we're trying to judge across or a lee bow, you have to paint the picture, and you have to sort of say, good chance we'll be able to hit them here, or actually, no, we're too close, so that the decision can get made. So there's a lot more talking than there would be previously, and it comes down to lack of vision for a lot of us. And
do you have screens that you can see off to your blind spots? Or?
We have screens, and we play with screens pointing in all sorts of direction, but the depth perception off a screen is just not there. Yeah. But the one thing that has changed for this Cup is with the One Design software that all the teams get, the race software, the other boat is on that screen.
Oh.
So when you're sailing along up, you see your boat, you see the other boat, and you see obviously the boundaries, and it puts all the ley lines on that.
So when you guys are talking about they're one and in, you're confident that they're one.
Well, you see their boat on your software, but you put your own wind into it. So like we'll put our wind field, like what our boat's reading currently, that determines your ley lines, right? So if they're in the same wind as you, you'll know that they're on that ley line or not. So when you see them go thin on a ley line, you know they've still got one more to go. So okay, we should be able to hit them here, or we can go beyond. So it's taken a lot of the guesswork out of it.
I'll say.
But it means that the software needs to be pretty accurate. But we also get these vectors that stick out the front of the boats, 10-second vectors, kind of like a ghost boat. So where you plan to be in 10 seconds. So you're judging a lot of the situation.
And is there a 10-second ghost on the other boat at the same time?
So when they tack, the line's short.
Yeah.
And as they build speed, so you can...
we just all thought you guys were really good at this.
Giving away all the secrets. It's like, that's why it's actually quite easy.
That's funny. Oh, this is very helpful. All right. Yeah. All right. This has actually been worth it.
We're not as good as you think.
All right, let's shift gears here a little bit. So it's constantly talked about how the boats have to get faster not from round to round, but from day to day, right? So give us an idea of what, I don't think anybody has a great idea of what that could be. Like you walk back into a room at the end of the day and somebody says, let's try this, or the flap needs to do this, or like give us a couple examples of what might be an improvement that Ineos, I think Ineos is clearly the boat that everybody has seen the largest growth out of in speed, maybe.
Yep.
What could they be doing different for the people at home who are wondering what this all means?
A lot of it comes down to, I think, maneuvering, because you do so many in the race, and the first maneuver is the trigger pull off the line, and how you execute, like reaching to upwind VMG performance is critical. And a lot of that comes down to obviously how you trim the sail. Mm-hmm. For acceleration, do you go a little bit deep, a little bit twisted through the build, and then, squeeze the leeches on and go highlight that. And on a mainsail, there's so many controls. You've got your main sheet, you've got your Cunningham, your master rotation, obviously your traveler position, the outhaul for the depth at the bottom, and then, the offset between the two skins.
Multiple outhauls.
Yeah, you have two outhauls, one for each sail, and you can do a lot with these sails. And the same with the jib. You've got Cunningham, sheet, track, and obviously you've got an outhaul on that as well to control the depth down low. So try to get every single piece of that to work through that chute. You do it well, you can be like 2 knots quicker. And the same with the turn rate and the heel and the cant. So what we're talking about is really detailed stuff, because the improvement you're going to make is not improving the foil itself at this point, right, or recutting your sails. It's how you use the tools that you've created. And I think Ineos did a great job of just sailing their boat more accurately, frankly. Like they were a little bit inaccurate in their flight in the early days, and their cant just seemed to not always be consistent. Like, the heel transition out of tacks. You'll notice boats when they tack, they'll generally exit the tack with windward heel, and then they'll transition from windward heel to flat to leeward heel just to try and keep the leeway vectors balanced. As the boat goes faster, you get more side force, so you've got to react that force. And if you don't adjust your cant transition through the build phase correctly, your speed just won't come as
You're getting back into commentary mode where we don't understand a word you're saying at some stage.
But you asked what happened.
I know.
And,
Completely. By the way,
but basically, if you had to put it in simple terms, it's how you sail the boat is what's making the difference.
but that's the interesting part, because I think that's quite lost, because I think people, the average person, looks at these boats and it's like, I can't do that. I know nothing about that. I'll never do that. And then what you're saying is trim the sails better.
Yeah.
It's the same thing on a beer can Tuesday night race, by the way.
Trim the sails better and fly the boat better. We have two things we need to do. It's the first one is point the boat in the right direction, trim the sails for the direction you're pointing it in, and make sure you're flying the boat in a way that it's not sliding sideways or crabbing to windward. And if you do that the most accurately, then you got to start thinking about the racing, where you position your tacks. And it's the other thing that's different here is it's very shifty. I thought that Auckland would be a shiftier venue than here. But as it turned out, we just went to course areas in Auckland that gave us pretty stable breeds.
Yep.
Whereas here, it's such a strange weather pattern where you end up, we've raced a lot in a Mistral lately, which is pumping out of France, and it's doing a full wraparound and coming back in an opposite direction. And then there's another land breeze coming out of Tarragona down the coast. And they just come in and converge, and you're getting 25-degree shifts in these races. And that's a huge gain or loss when you hit a boundary at the wrong time.
What's the strength and weakness of your boat?
Hopefully no weaknesses by the time we come around. In general, we've tried to build a boat that would get us through the range quite nicely.
But you're expecting light air. If you were to tick the box.
So we've optimized for light air. Last Cup, I think the team optimized for more wind, and the performance difference was as soon as it got over 10 knots, the boat was an absolute weapon. This time, tried to hedge more for the light air, and we feel pretty happy, pretty confident in the bottom end.
Yep.
And we've spent a lot of time of late trying to, we feel like we've hedged light, and some of the other teams have hedged a bit windier, so we're trying to work out how to smooth our performance up the wind range without compromising the light air. And a lot of that comes from foils, a lot of that comes from the sails and how you set them up, and techniques as well.
A lot of people are curious. First of all, excuse me, it was brilliant that you guys, that the team set it up so you could do so much racing against other boats.
That was handy here.
Oh my goodness.
It's not the first time that's happened though.
Oh, well, it's pretty obvious, of course, in Auckland, where just race time was potentially an Achilles heel for this team, because you just didn't have any race time. This time around, kind of tick that box. But at the same time, now you're out by yourself. I guess the whole world is wondering, and I'm not expecting a direct answer, but how much is held back during those preliminary rounds, and then how much do you just flick the switch and when I assume you're sailing almost every day?
Yeah, we've taken a few breaks for sure, but yeah, we're sailing as much as we can.
And then is there a whole list of new things you got to try, or is this just perfecting what you guys were kind of based off of when you were sailing against everybody else?
Yeah, I think the key thing for us was doing a check-in with the fleet, which we got to do in the prelim and the round robin. And then we had a 5-week period where we could remode the boat if we needed to. So, as I was alluding to, we kind of set ourselves up pretty well for the light air. And some of the other teams have probably hedged a little bit high. So we've made a few mods to try and, just widen our performance range. And we've got a few of those on already, and they're going really well. But we still don't know how we will compare to the other boats through their process. But, the key thing for us was to get a bunch of racing in to remind us that it's an event that you need to race well. And I think our racecraft was pretty good in terms of how we went in the first few rounds. And so now we're you kind of back that, but don't forget about that. But we've been in full development mode since then. We've had lots of new sales coming online.
By the way, you can never have enough new sales. That's just
well, we're only allowed, 15 jibs and 6 mains. So maybe they'll change the rule and give us 20 in the future.
I'm working on that, believe me.
Yeah.
That's my full-time job.
And I'm sure other people are trying to reduce that number.
Yeah.
But it's incredible what you can get, from out of the mains. We've had, several iterations of mains, and just some of it's big changes, some of it's just fine tuning. It's a lot of it's fairings, how you fare the foot on the bottom of the boat, and how you fare the main traveller trough. Like, that's the area we're working in. We tried to put the best foot forward, and it's like, okay, what is the optimization process now? And it's very hard to keep developing and optimizing a boat while you're racing and on the edge of being eliminated.
No question.
I felt that at Bermuda. Artemis, we kind of like, once the racing began, it was like hard to keep the development going while you're racing, because if you develop in the wrong direction, you're eliminated. Whereas for us here, we're like, okay, we can make some experiments, go out there.
But you have
do some tests.
You have no, you're not getting any data from the challengers as they're out racing now, right?
No, so all the data that comes out is basically the umpire files, which go to all teams. And
umpire files. So describe that to.
So each of the teams will get a copy of the race, which is what Richard Slater effectively sees. So you can see speed, heading, wind of the boats.
Yeah.
But that's about as far as the data goes.
Okay.
So like that was the same in Auckland.
Wind angle?
Yep. Well, you get wind speed, wind direction, course wind angle, boat speed.
And then I'm sure you have a way to kind of take that and translate it to
performance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
Oh, that's really interesting.
We've also found online there's people outside of the America's Cup doing the exact same thing, posting online saying, in this race, this was the performance differences between the teams. This is the tacking performance, jobbing performance. Like, you just go to some.
Do you want to mention any of these people?
I don't even know the website, but someone in our team found it and shared the link, and now we're like, they're doing the data analysis for us. But it's public access to lots of people, so it's not just the teams that get.
That would be hilarious.
Yeah, I'm sure they know.
All right, Nathan Outteridge, first of all, good luck. It's great to see you, and thank you very much for your time.
No, my pleasure. Good to see you.
A fantastic conversation there with Nathan, one of the stars of our sport, and someone who will no doubt have a big impact on the final outcome of this America's Cup. Next up is my conversation with my old friend, Bruno Dubois, one of the most experienced leaders in sailing who certainly has a unique perspective on this event. I'm grateful to Bruno for taking the time to sit down with me during what must have been a tough period to reflect on the French team's whirlwind journey to Barcelona. Do you like being the underdog? It seems like a lot of the programs you're with,
it's true.
No, I'm being serious. Do you like being the underdog?
I don't know.
Some people love being the underdog. Some people love being the favorite. It seems like I'm not saying, by the way, that it doesn't end up well in the end. I'm just saying that Dongfeng, the first French Team France, this program, kind of underdog.
I don't know if I like it, but we end up each time like that. I remember at the start of the Dongfeng, the first race with the Chinese, I remember somebody on Facebook, a guy from Texas, he said, those guys will never go further than Cape Town. We won the race.
For Dongfeng?
Yes. Because we lost a sail during the practice race in Alicante, and Chinese, or one of the Chinese crew almost fell overboard and said, this guy's too dangerous, they should stop. And we won the race. So that was a good position. No, I think underdog is also the fact that sometimes, especially for the America's Cup, we never end up with the same level of program that the others. And that's what makes the difference here is we are really trying to find a way to keep France into the momentum, because France do a cup, they got the money late, they don't have enough time to train, the design is not perfect, they eliminate. Mm-hmm. That's the pattern for 13 times now that France is going. Mm. So the idea with Stefan Kandler was that we tried to find a way to keep going after. And that's what our main focus buying the design package from Team New Zealand, trying to organize the future of the team, everything. That was our main focus in terms of business. And I don't care really to be an underdog. It stopped very quickly once we win. I don't think on CLGP we're an underdog, not at all. Just need to have result. That's what made a change now.
You realized, I guess, early on when you guys decided to do an America's Cup program that you were already too late, right? And by the way, time, as Dennis always used to tell me, it's all about time and money. So those are the two most valuable assets. When you guys got going, and all of a sudden, and I'm going to ask you a separate question about the Team New Zealand design package, because I think it's something that people don't really understand very much. Once you got going, was there ever a moment where hope kind of really started to peak? Like, you always had to realize we're on the back foot here, guys, right? Was there ever a moment in time where, you know what, we could actually really surprise some people? And by the way, I'm not saying that in a derogatory way, like you didn't surprise some people, but was there ever one of those peak moments where we have something?
Yeah, well, first of all, we didn't start late. We started in the same time as American Magic and Alinghi. We had the money, but the money was not in the bank.
Yeah.
And it was a investor came us and they say, look, I'm buying part of the team so you can start, and it's a private person. And then after that, crash in the Bitcoin, everything happened, and the guy said, sorry, I'm gone. And Stefan and I, we were like about, 3 million in the hole.
Yeah.
And we lost at that time. But at that time, we had a full design team, and our plan was still to buy a design package from Team New Zealand, but then upgrade that one or develop it. Mm-hmm. And then we stopped for 4 months, and that's where we realized that 4 months, it's a lot in the cup.
Did you ever think about stopping, period?
We were thinking, I said to Stefan, look, I cannot finish my career with $3 million.
It's
dollar,
in the hole.
Depth, and we couldn't pay the people and everything. It's not possible. And Stefan is one thing, he's amazing. When he's got somebody.
This is your partner in crime, Stefan Candler.
Who, we sailed together with his dad on the K yachting, K challenge stuff before.
Crazy.
And
crazy K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember the...
Oh, yeah, I was chemist.
And then after that, so we know each other for a long time, and he said, look, Bruno, we have to do this together, it will be fine. And he never stopped. I was about to just give up. And he never stopped. And he basically said, look, if we stop, we're not going to be able to pay the people. We're going to finish with debt and bankrupt. That's not possible. Suddenly we find, Sébastien Bazin, the CEO of Accor, and he start, bringing all the people with it. And we had the money, but late. And then we say, okay, we take the design package from the 2.5 boat from Team New Zealand, so which was the same boat as the last Cup, but upgrade, the one that they used to train with. And then we had discussion with Dalton, and he said, guys, it will be a better investment if you buy the same design as us. It will be easier for them too to send us the design at the same time. And then we start thinking long term with Stefan and with the sponsor. We told them, look, if we have the design version, the last version of the design package, we're going to get late. We're going to build in France. Everybody thought that we would be like 6 months later.
You still have to build in France.
We have to build in France. And by the way, we finished the boat 1 week quicker than in New Zealand. So it was a fantastic achievement from Multiplast and the team and our team there to build the boat. But it was late. We started sailing in June, early June with the boat. We're totally commissioning the boat in May, but really sailing with it in June. And we knew that it was late. But at one moment we said, okay, I think the boat is fast. The boat has some real potential. But again, you buy a design package, you do not design the system.
Let's talk about buying a design package, because I think in the last Cup they offered up design packages as well. It's a way.
It was Star and Stripes.
That's right.
Try to get the design package.
In essence, you're embedded with their design team for how long? Your people.
We're allowed to work with them until the first boat is launched, their boat or our boat. Once we launch the boat, it's finished.
Okay.
We're not allowed to talk.
Right.
And
That's a protocol thing or a rules thing.
no, that's a rule, that's a protocol. That's the rule that we knew that we couldn't talk to them after. And that's where it's more challenging. No, I think Luna Rosa bought a design package in 2013 with the catamaran in San Francisco. Yeah, they had that. And they told me, I remember they told me, Bruno, the biggest problem for us was to understand the system that we didn't design. Now, the catamaran at that time, that was quite easy system. Here, it's not even a Formula One. It's a F-16. It's a jet.
Yeah.
And that's where the brain behind that is not yours.
Would you do it again? Would you buy so you guys continue on, and in 3 years there's going to be another cup, and the opportunity is presented in front of you.
Sure. I think there's one thing that I keep laughing about it. We had designers that we hired at the very beginning, and they said, let's take the 2.5 design. We will optimize it. So those people came from other team from the America's Cup. You know, it's expensive to have a design team of 35, 40, 50 people. And I have a good friend who is a French coach who worked in the America's Cup. And he told me, Bruno, those people are coming to pick up the design and the brain of Team New Zealand and sell themselves more expensive next time. Just take the design, learn how to use it, and then build your own team in the future with people that you create. And they don't have to come from the America's Cup. That's quite often we hear, if you didn't do the last America's Cup with the system, no need to go.
Right. I don't want to get into the details, the technical details, because we hear enough about that stuff. Let's just talk about the regatta for a second. So, design package, put the boat in, you're late, you're kind of on the back foot. When you signed up to do the America's Cup, did you know that the cruelty of when a single boat was going to go? I mean, to me, that is like sticking a needle in your eye. That was downright cruel. Like, race for a couple of weeks and somebody's going home.
Or common friend Juan K. He's the first one who told me, he said, Bruno, you know that just after 1 week of sailing, one boat going to go. And right now we're the one that everybody think going to go because we have less time and less money. And I say, yes, but we're looking at 2 editions because when we enter in this race,
but
we know it's going to be the 38 with the same boat.
Sponsors. So are you telling me that you're a good enough salesperson? I know you're a very good salesperson. You're a good enough salesperson to convince a sponsor, don't worry, that we're thinking ahead to the future.
Well, we talk about that, but I always say to the journalists, I never go to a race thinking that it's lost. And I think it's important for the athlete to be not at work, but also feel comfortable to perform. I think the time of no pain, no gain, I think those days those days are over. You need to be comfortable in your life to perform, I think.
How was this team thought of back in France?
I'm amazed. I'm really surprised. And also the journalists, the French journalists and international journalists, how positive they are of what we built over only a year and a half. But there's one thing that our comms manager asked me to do a few months ago or a year ago is to stop. I canceled all my social media. I have nothing left. Oh, really? I don't want to look at because there is some social media. People are angry and always, and like for example, Facebook for certain. There's like people who are there's so much hate on that channel or to complain all the time. So, but there's one thing I learned also with our mental coach is a guy who took care of a guy. Léon Marchand. Yeah. The guy who got 5 gold medals and also the Manodou swimmer, he's taking care of those guys. And I learned something with him is that he asked those kids to leave France, go in the States, or go in Australia to train. You do an MBA down there, and you stay with American people. So if you have on a starting line for a swimmer, an American, an Australian, or a Kiwi, and a French, the French will look at both and say, oh, I have no chance. Mm-hmm. If technically you think you are as good, mm-hmm. you look at both sides, oh, no, I can't. I'm not going to make it. Mm-hmm. Because the environment and the media are always telling you that, no, you're not going to make it. When you're American,
You better win or you're going to get...
Yeah. So you're God. You see, you don't care about the other one. And that's a strength when you're an athlete.
So right now, the plan is to keep going.
Yeah.
Sponsors happy?
Sponsors are happy. They're disappointed of the result, but they are happy about the work that have been done and the hospitality and the youth and the women. And, yeah.
You took us for a little view of your boat here. Is that a boat or is that a plane or is that what is that? What did we look at? And I don't. I've said this before, and people say, "Oh, don't be that old guy who's rail."
No, I fully agree.
Is it a boat?
Yes, it is a boat. The boat definition is what the world want to make it, and the world right now are the young people.
Yeah,
the young people want to sail mud. They want to sail wasp. They want to go fast. Catamaran, Nakra. That's what the world wants, and then the racing is faster, the broadcast is easier, you can sell better to the sponsor. That's what the new generation want. Now, if the oldest one, like me, do not like it and they think it's not a boat, you know what?
Get out of the way.
Time for change. No,
exactly.
That's what it is, no?
I agree.
And it's the same in business.
Yeah.
If, yeah.
I'm with you. All right, we're down to brass tacks. Louis Vuitton finals, beautiful base, by the way. We got to watch everybody put their sails up before they went on to the race course today. Very well chosen, your base. I'm sure you didn't have a lot of say.
We had the last one to pick up the place anyway.
Who's going to win the series? Is the series going to be close? Who's going to win the Italians versus the Brits?
I believe the Italian have a faster boat. They have the ability to go in a high mode sometime, which has really impressed me. But if you just open the door one little to Ben, he will never let you go.
Yeah.
I've been impressed for a while. It's already in SailGP, but look, you open the door to him, it's over. I think Dylan and Ben together, they like the mix of two generation. I'm sure Ben would not like when I say that, but
no, I think it is.
It is.
Yeah, no question.
And also the other trimmer, there's Lee McMillan, who we work with, and then the other trimmer, who is engineer in aeronautic, and he understands the process and I think the way to develop the boat. As a sailor, I think I'm quite impressed. Right.
So you were just firmly on the fence. You kind of picked.
I think Luna Rossa is quicker. I think
you picked Luna Rossa, then you made a great point for the British, and now we're back to Luna Rossa.
If Jamie and Francisco open the door just a little bit, I think. But downwind, it's complicated because downwind, the Brits are really fast.
Yeah. Why do you think?
They're force.
Everybody's been
probably
saying that.
Force, yeah. Probably. It force, but they sail very well. I think they're better sailors. Overall, I think the view tactic on the water, I think is better. But
all right, so let's take one more leap and go to the finals and make the. By the way, Bruno Dubois has officially said that the Italians are going to win the Louis Vuitton Cup. Let's just make an assumption they go through. Italians, Kiwis, is it a close series or is it a runaway, or where do you see this?
The problem is the Kiwi do not have any racing time at all against the others, so they cannot. But I'm
How much
sure
configuration change do you think they can make over these? What is it? It's going to be almost a month, right?
I'm sure they have few things.
They didn't show everything in that preliminary series.
If you know a little bit the Kiwi, I think they are coming with something, and I think Pete and Nathan.
Good team.
I would love to say, hey, we go in Cagliari, but I think they show us that they are quite impressive. I think the Kiwi.
Bruno Dubois, a person I enjoy calling a friend, a colleague for a number of years, and congratulations putting this together. And let's hope like crazy you got a long future here with France in the America's Cup. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to wrap up this episode with my extended interview with Tom Whidden, a colleague and friend who knows the event inside and out and has a lot of great stories and insights to share. I want to bounce around a little bit, and I'm going to ask you some kind of fairly different era questions. And one thing we were doing, Tim and I here, when we were doing our homework, is apparently after the 87 campaign, we're going to kind of start at the pinnacle here, which I consider kind of the pinnacle for your career, is the 87 campaign, which the whole world watched and kind of helped change sailing in many ways, thanks to the TV side of it. So first of all, I'm making an assumption. Do you consider the 87 Cup kind of the pinnacle of your America's Cup career?
For sure. But there are two moments there are kind of three moments that I remember the best. Obviously, winning the first one that we won in 1980, that was sort of the pinnacle at that point, because growing up as a kid, I always was in awe of the 12 meters and the 12-meter guys. So that was kind of fun. And then obviously a high or low point was to try to win that race in 83, having the race of the century there, and doing quite well for at least part of the race, and then having lost it. But, having the fortitude and whatever to go try to win it back in 87. And 87 was really the best campaign. At that point we'd done two. We'd seen both sides. We saw what it's like to win, and we saw what it was like to lose. And, Dennis and I spoke about about how great it would be to try to go win it back on our way in on 83. So, we were all upset, but we were already talking about what it would be like to go try to win it. And then the whole event on 87, the fact that you still have to win the Challenger trials, which was something we weren't used to at that point. And, the odds were quite against us. I think there were 11 boats or something like that to try to win it, so far from home, halfway around the world. I think if you dug a hole from Essex, Connecticut, and straight through to you would be in Fremantle, Australia. So that was kind of wild. And, putting my kids in school down there and, having such a different life, and then having it work out so well was really incredible, Kenny.
Do you think it's fair to say that your career is kind of forever linked to Dennis Conner when it comes to the America's Cup?
I do. I think Dennis and I ended up pretty good friends out of it all, and maybe you could even say best friends, because you do so much for 24 years I sailed with him in America's Cup venue events. And, you learn a lot, and you learn a lot about a person. And, Dennis is probably misunderstood, and you had a couple of campaigns with him, so I'm sure it was even hard for you to understand him. And, later in his career, he never had enough money really to do it right, but he was a very talented guy. And I learned a lot about the Cup, and I learned a lot about sailing, and I learned a lot about life.
So back to a couple specific Cup programs. So was 1980 Freedom, 1980, was that against the bendy rig of Australia? Or
It was. It was. It was the second year with Australia won, and they came up with a really innovative idea.
But wasn't the bendy rig done by the Brits, and they swapped out before the finals and gave
I think
the challengers
had
kind
the
of
idea first.
All right, so this is a leading question. What do you think, knowing that the challengers back then were just kind of, sooner or later, they try to beat each other up to be the challenger, right?
Yep.
And then it's kind of this, it always to me kind of felt like an unwritten rule. We're going to try to beat each other up. Somebody's going to come through, and then we're going to do our best to make you be as competitive as possible to beat the defender. The ultimate goal by the challengers is to beat the defender. In today's day and age, the defender schedules a regatta, which they get to sail against the challengers for 2 full rounds, speed test, do whatever the heck they want to do. I mean, I can't even fathom the amount of data they have off of that. what do you think about the new America's Cup when it comes to nuance like that? I mean, the new America's Cup is I think we all agree it's a different game completely.
Sure.
But that type of nuance, I think, I miss. I miss the challengers ganging up on the defender and nobody knowing until that, as I think Dobbs said today in the other side of the podcast, I miss the days of not knowing who was going to win the first cross of the America's Cup.
Yeah, of course.
What do you think?
Kenny, you bring up a really good nuance and point. So in 1980 was kind of the first time that things were starting to change. And what was changing is that the pressure was on New York to be more fair because they'd won it so many times in a row. The challengers were predisposed to think they were supposed to lose up to that point. And I think the challengers figured out that they had to do something bold to win. So if you think about 1980, and you bring up a very good point, the bendy rig was something pretty innovative.
Sure was.
And it sort of circumnavigated the rule because there were no real girth rules. And there was an E and a P, a left length and a foot length. And this was really innovative. And by the way, what people don't remember from 1980, they beat us in 2 races, like amazing. They beat us by like 4 minutes.
Right.
So one of them didn't quite make the time limit and they got to race it again.
That wasn't a special New York Yacht Club rule, was it? Or somebody sped up the clock as they might have done back in the day? Was it actually not making the time limit?
Well, you never know. But I mean, we were praying for the time limit.
Yeah.
And I think there was a protest over running lights. The race took so long. And then the next day or whatever, maybe we called for a lay day or whatever. And the next day they beat us by over 4 minutes, if I remember right. So the boat was capable of winning if the wind had ever stayed really light. But it didn't, and Freedom was quite good in the breeze. But the attitudinal shift for the challengers to start working a little bit together after they tried to pummel each other, what you point out is a really good thing. And, fast forward to today, it's gotten quite different. But, you say the Cup's changed a lot. Okay, the sailing has changed a lot, but it's still a technology contest. And the technology is so cool right now. I mean, I wish I thought of the idea of having a single foil do 3 things. It gets the boat up out of the water, so reduces drag. It keeps the boat going straight, and it gives the boat stability, so the boat can be super light. So that's all technology, and it's always been a technology contest. So things have changed, but maybe they're the same.
Do you think the bendy rig, and I think the bendy rig historically in the America's Cup has never gotten enough attention, but I've told stories that I think the bendy rig led to the wing keel because of what you just said. All of a sudden, the challengers started thinking, hey, you know what? We don't have to lose every time. And let's think way outside the box. It kind of feels like that was a natural evolution, and it's not coincidental that the Australians kind of ended up doing both.
Well, yeah, if you think about it. So what was really cool about the boat in 83 is that they just figured out you could build a smaller boat that didn't have to be, that could be better in light air because a smaller 12 meter, as you well know, gives you more sail area. Mm-hmm. But typically the boat having less length and ergo less stability by having all that sail area didn't work. It didn't work across the whole range. No. So Ben Lexon was pretty smart. He figured out, why not just have a minimum sized boat, but turn the keel upside down?
Pile a bunch of litter down at the bottom.
He turned the keel upside down.
Yep.
And he attached the bottom of the keel to the boat. and he had the top of the keel down low. And the only problem with that is there were wicked bottom vortices. So there was a lot of drag. So how'd they figure out how to shed the vortices? They figured out how to do a wing on the boat. Now, of course, they designed it in the wrong country. But at that point,
oh, here comes this New York Yacht Club, maybe
At
potential
that point,
bias
the
coming.
challengers had whipsawed the New York Yacht Club into being pretty neutered at that point. And at that, remember that the Australians never signed the document that you were supposed to sign that said they abided by all the rules. So they weren't in a bad position. They just refused to sign it. And at that point, the New York Yacht Club decided that the public opinion was, getting pretty loaded towards the challenger side. And they didn't want to look as bad as they probably would have looked if they hadn't allowed Australia 2 in the regatta. And at that point, they said, okay, we've won it for 132 years. Dennis and Tom will figure out how to win it again. And we almost did.
Is the America's Cup, and were you of the opinion, and if you, I'm guessing it was heartbreak, right? Like that I can't even fathom the emotion. We've all been in races that we've won and lost, that meant a lot. How did you ever come to the conclusion that the America's Cup might be in a better place because the Americans did lose it, and all of a sudden it started kind of a whole new world in the America's Cup?
Oh, Kenny, for sure. In retrospect, it was the greatest thing that ever happened. I mean, I don't necessarily like where the Cup is today, but I don't dislike it. And I think it's, I have a lot of, I give a lot of credit to the people that have come up with this boat because it's really cool. But, when I'm riding in an 83, having lost the race of the century, by the way, we were up 3-1. So the travesty isn't losing that last race. The travesty isn't figuring out how to win one of the last 3 races.
Right.
And all of them have a story, a good story. A breakdown, a shifty northwest wind that, was difficult. And then the race of the century was really cool.
Yeah.
And probably the best race we raced in this series, other than, maybe we should have gone to the corner or whatever. But, in retrospect, looking back, it was the best thing. And the best thing that ever happened to me was 87. Look at all the nice things that happened to us. As you say, key to the city, trip to the White House. Of course, we got a trip to the White House when we lost in 83 too. But so maybe it felt a lot better in 87.
I bet it did.
A lot of good things happened.
Yeah. So you
retrospectively, it was good for the Cup.
Do you like, forget the boats for a second, do you like the format of this America's Cup? Do you like kind of the race course, the starting? I mean, everything's a little different, right? Everything started when the boats came out of the water. Totally, we all get how the boats came out of the water, and all of a sudden it's a different track that they have to go around. Do you enjoy watching an America's Cup race right now?
Not for the same reasons that I liked it back when the boats were in the water and there were sail choices and crew errors and whatever. And do I like the fact that there are 4 people that don't even know how to sail on the boat, and maybe even 6? I mean, probably not 6, but there are parts that I don't like, but I'm watching it and I'm enjoying it. And, I find the course being a little confining, and I find the tactics quite different, but, maybe they're the same. And I like the gates, that gives an opportunity to split the boats up. I like that. I would think the race would be much better if it was a 4-minute window for the start as opposed to 2.
A lot of people have said that, actually.
Yeah, I would like that a lot better. I mean, at least there'd be some turns and dial-ups and whatever, Yeah. But, it's just different, Ken. I'm still a sailing fanatic, and I still love sailing, so I'm watching every race.
North Sails for a second. Terry Kohler, our beloved past owner, and you, and in many ways, Jay Hansen, your kind of counterpart in crime back then, kind of certainly changed the sailmaking world, but in many ways kind of changed the marine industry by just taking these two huge leaps in sail technology with first 3DL and then 3DI. Was there, let's just start with 3DL for a second, which was something that nobody had ever seen before. I guess I was working with Peter, your old friend Peter Conrad at Substat at the time, and he was trial and erroring some other form of a 3DL type thing. But 3DL, I think everybody would agree, changed the game. Was that a hard can you think back to the conversation that you had with Terry Kohler at the time? Like, I want to spend a ton of your money on something that we have no flippant idea if it's actually going to work at the end of the day. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh yeah, there were a couple of parts because Terry never really gave us money to do things, but he was always there. So I always had to raise money from the bank. But thinking about '87 in a different vein, Ken, that was a watershed moment for me because I'd left Substed and I'd concentrated on the campaign. '87, I was way more involved in the campaign itself than I ever had been before. Dennis had to spend most of his life raising money.
Right.
And he was Commodore of the San Diego Yacht Club, if I remember right at the time. So he had plenty on his plate. So I was much more involved with the campaign from a point of view of trying to make the boats go fast. But it was a watershed moment for me career-wise because I'd left Substed, I'd done the campaign. At the end, I'd met Terry Kohler towards the end, and we had talked about maybe me coming to work for North. But I'd also thought about a job, like I was thinking about going to New York and getting a real job. And Merrill Lynch, one of our sponsors, made me a nice offer at that point. So when I first talked to Terry, I said, hey, Terry, I don't really want to do sailmaking the way we had done it before because I don't think anybody will ever have an edge. And I think that North, being the leader at that point, actually Hood was still an important sailmaker at that point, and maybe even leading still in brand awareness.
Sure.
So, I said to Terry, hey, look, I will consider coming to run the company, but I don't want to do it the way we've done it before. We've got to find a way to make sales and the material and have some sort of product differentiation, or I'm not interested in doing it. And he was a keen MIT guy. Remember, he went through MIT. He got 3 degrees in 3 years. So, the guy's smart, and he was like so into technology and so into engineering. And, I said, I've got a couple ideas, but I don't know what they haven't, I've ruminated them through in my own mind, but I haven't really figured it out. So he goes, yeah, I'm all into it. I'm all in. You got to come run the company, whatever. So when I came to run North, the one thing that was missing at North is that they weren't very confident at that point. Everybody was second guessing their designs, and they'd run around with leach cuts and things that, other sailmakers were poking fun at or poking holes in. And so the one thing I did was I said, hey, coming from the outside, you guys have everything. You don't know how good you are. You don't know what capabilities you have, and you don't know how many strengths you have. And at the same time, I said, hey, we got to get into big boats and got to get into the Whitbread at that point, and we've got to dominate maxi boats. And Hood was dominating at that point in the big boats.
Yep.
So when I did that, I ran into a guy named Pierre Fellman, who had a boat called Merit Cup. Absolutely. And somehow I convinced him into trying North Sails at that point. And he had a couple of guys that were on board his boat, and one of them was called J.P. Baudet. And J.P. Baudet, when we built this first set of North Sails, was very helpful. And he said, hey, I've got an idea. And it was an idea that was talking about molded sails and building the cloth, building the material and the sail together on a mold. And I said, this is it. And ironically, North had a patent for making windsurf sails in a molded fashion, but it was a female mold as opposed to a male mold. And I said, JP, you may have a problem getting around North's patent. And he was trying to apply or thinking about applying for a patent on his idea at the time. And it was quite different than what we ended up doing, Kenny. But it was such a great idea that I immediately seized on it, went to Terry, went to the bank, told him how much money we were going to need. And we signed a deal with JP to come work with us. And he had a partner named Luke Dubois. And the two of them started building sails in the back of our office. And we built a J24 jib and a laser main. And I could see immediately that this was the future. But the sails fell apart, of course. But, and it was very impractical to build them the way we were building them at that point. But we always imagined gantries and molds and whatever. So that was the start.
It all starts with J24s.
Oh, yeah. And lasers. Yeah. Look what it did for your career.
Exactly. So final question.
And by the way, is there a more uncomfortable boat besides that in an IOD?
Don't tell Rod or Bob Johnstone that, but hey.
They were skippers. And the skipper has a good deal on the J24. Everybody else has a bad deal.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. Hey, so final question. Kids today, you and I grew up in a totally different era in many ways. I was probably one slight step away. I mean, you grew up in an era where you want to be a sailboat racer, you had to go work for a marine company. And that's the only way to be a sailboat racer. I grew up in that same era, hence the fact that we both started out as both sailors and sailmakers. I probably had a little more of the kind of the professional side of things than you did by a little bit. Today's day and age, these kids, if you're a 17-year-old Tom Whidden and thinking about the Olympics and the America's Cup, but all of a sudden there's, hey, I'll pay you $500 a day to sail my J70, and seems like kids get a little lost these days in that transition. What do you think? You're a kid. What's Tom Whidden's advice to a young kid on how to get into the sailing world and how to try to be an America's Cup tactician, do 8 America's Cups, and as you always say, win a bunch and you've lost more than any tactician in history? Is that what you said?
Well, I don't know about that, but I definitely have lost the cup twice for America. So, and I'm still in America, and I'm still a New York Yacht Club member. So
they haven't booted you out yet.
People forget. They forget. But yeah, you're right. Things are different, and I don't think we can stand in the way of change. I think you have to be a change agent. You have to accept that things are different today, and not think things were better in our day, but embrace the sailing that there is. Foiling has certainly changed the game, and foiling both on windsurfers and kites and wings and boats, certainly, and, look at the Moth. So I think you can't stand in the way of evolution, so we got to embrace it, and we've got to find a path forward.
Okay, I'd be remiss.
You've been good at that.
Well, you can't slow it down, right? The train left the station, so as much as you want to jump under the tracks and make it stop, it ain't going to stop.
No, and I know I'm a dinosaur, but I'm still sailing and I'm still enjoying it.
Final question, putting you on the spot. Sailors are kings of hindsight. We all go back to races that we coulda, shoulda, woulda. Round 43 seconds ahead at the top mark of race 7, 1983. The infamous run. Heard around the world. I don't know if that's a correct statement, but anyway, what would you have done different?
Oh, knowing what I know now?
Correct.
So here are the facts, and then I'll tell you what I would have done different.
There's no Tom Whidden answer that's ever started with, here are the facts, because these facts,
but
they're a little fuzzy at this stage.
So you want to know where we lost the race?
Okay.
So the second beat I called a big wind shift to the left, and we gained a ton. We had, by our account, a 1.5-minute lead.
Yep.
And you know, I've always said, love the one you're with. The left was working, and I switched it off to the right. So we only had a 50-second or 52-second lead at the Windward Mark.
All right.
We had a 1.5 minutes at one point, and no matter what we did on the run, we could have probably held that off.
Yeah.
So we get up to the Windward Mark, 10 minutes into the run, which, mind you, is a half an hour run in those days in light air.
Sure.
They take half the lead away. So we got to decide, do we keep going until they jibe and just match, or do we go try to pick a few shifts? So you told me not to say the facts, but obviously what I would do different is I would have gone to the corner. Now that I know what I know, but we kind of lost the race on the beat. And it was
I've never heard that version of it. I always tell people that one of the most interesting parts of doing America's Cups with you and Dennis was going out to dinner and asking the same question at each dinner and just getting an incredible variety of answers.
Well, mind you, cocktails have to go along with dinner.
Fair enough. Tom Whidden, it would not be this would not be an America's Cup podcast without your input and good stories. So we appreciate it very much, boss. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks for not asking me what my biggest regret was.
Oh, you just opened up Pandora's box. Let's hear it.
My biggest regret was that I didn't join you in 2000 early enough.
Fair enough.
And we had a good boat that time. And I think we could have made it to the finals. Yeah. That's my biggest regret of 8 America's Cup campaigns. I enjoyed sailing with you.
I told Dobbs today that you were we all passionately called you the adult supervision.
Probably needed it at that point.
Oh, there's no question we needed it at that point.
Now you're the adult.
Oh,
and I'm like the senior advisor.
Thank you, Tom.
How do you like being an adult, Kenny?
No, never happened, my friend. Never happened.
So there we have it. Some great names from the Cup, both past and present. It was terrific to speak with Nathan, who's gearing up to defend the Cup, to hear from Bruno on the challenges of putting together a new program to challenge for the old mug. And of course, it's always easy to speak with Tom Whidden, not only my boss for a number of years, but a true sailing superstar. In our next episode, we'll be speaking with some of the legends of the microphone, whose esteemed commentating has brought the Cup to life and on TV for so many of us for so many years. There's hopefully going to be some great racing coming up, so stand by. And of course, sail fast and talk soon.